Meet William Foster, a 48-year-old CEO whose empire spans across Seattle's skyline, but whose heart hides a lifetime of unanswered questions. One chilly morning at a local street market, he spots a 10-year-old girl named Ava, crafting jewelry with hands that mirror his own. Something about her quiet focus, her left-handed wire twist, stops him cold. When William starts asking questions, he discovers Ava lives with her aunt, while her mother, Julia, sits behind bars for petty theft. Julia, the woman William once loved and lost. Pressured by his powerful mother, Diane, William walked away from Julia years ago, never knowing she was pregnant. Now, letters Julia wrote him, returned and hidden by Diane, confirm the unthinkable. Ava is his daughter. As William fights for a second chance, he faces suspicion from Ava, bitterness from Julia, and a ruthless custody battle led by his own mother. But through it all, one thing keeps him going: a handmade necklace from Ava with one simple word: family. Will Ava ever accept the father she never knew? Can William undo the damage of the past and rebuild trust where it was once broken? This is a story about redemption, resilience, and the legacy we choose to leave behind. Subscribe for more heartfelt stories that remind us, sometimes, love is handmade. The rain in Seattle had a way of making the city feel smaller, like secrets hid beneath puddles and stories clung to the mist. William Foster, CEO of Foster Holdings and once dubbed the architect of Northwest real estate, didn't usually walk this part of Pike Place Market. But that Saturday morning, something, he wouldn't call it instinct, not yet, pulled him from the sleek confines of his Escalade and into the scent of rain-dampened wood, spices, and soldered silver. His assistant had texted twice. A board update, a lunch meeting. He ignored both. He passed rows of flower vendors, steaming coffee carts and booths filled with handcrafted soaps and watercolor prints. Then he saw her. A small folding table stood wedged between a leather goods stall and a food truck. Behind it, a little girl, 10 maybe, sat hunched over a velvet pad, threading wire through beads with careful, practiced fingers. Her hands moved with a precision that made William stop in his tracks. Left hand steady, right hand guiding the wire, looping it twice before pulling taut. That motion, that rhythm. It was the same one he used when tying a Windsor knot, the same flick of the wrist he had when adjusting his cufflinks. A movement inherited from no one he could remember, but there it was, in a child he had never seen before. She didn't look up. A sign in front of her read, Ava's Originals, handmade jewelry, $5 out of $12. Her hair was pulled into a neat ponytail, a few strands stuck to her cheek from the drizzle. A puffy jacket swallowed her frame, and her sneakers looked too tight. Behind her, an older woman chatted with a vendor, occasionally glancing over her shoulder at the girl. William stood still, watching. Something inside him whispered, "Stay." She picked up a finished piece. A delicate necklace strung with turquoise stones and a single silver charm that read Hope, and laid it gently on a cloth square. She glanced up then, briefly. Their eyes met. She didn't smile. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as if assessing him. Her eyes were the color of pine bark, deep brown with flecks of gold. William felt a jolt. Not recognition exactly, but something else. Like hearing a melody he couldn't name but somehow knew. Then she looked away. "Sir, are you interested in something?" the woman behind the stall asked. The older one, mid-40s, worn flannel jacket. Hands chapped from work. She stepped beside the girl and smiled politely. William cleared his throat. "Who makes the pieces?" "Ava does," the woman said proudly. "All by herself. Started at 8. He looked again at the child, Ava, who was now adjusting a clasp with quiet focus. "She's very talented," William said softly. She gets it from her mom, the woman replied, her voice lowering with something more tender or guarded. William hesitated. Her mother? Julia, the woman said, watching his face carefully. My sister. She's not here right now. Not here. It echoed. There was something final about the way she said it, something that raised more questions than it answered. I see, William replied. He didn't, but he nodded anyway. He bought a necklace, one with tiny silver leaves, and gave Ava a $20 bill. She looked at it, then at him, unimpressed. You didn't even ask the price, she said quietly. I didn't need to, William replied, trying a gentle smile. Ava looked away. She doesn't like pity, the woman added, or being talked down to. I wasn't, William began, but stopped himself. Maybe he was. Maybe he had no idea how to talk to a 10-year-old girl who had his hands and his focus and possibly something else. He tucked the necklace into his coat pocket. I'm William, he said. The woman raised an eyebrow. Mary? No, last name offered. A pause. A beat of rain on tarps overhead. Well, Mary, Ava, he said, nodding to them both. Good luck today. As he turned and walked away, his pace slower now, the necklace in his pocket felt heavier than it should. A small, delicate thing, but it burned like a brand. Back in the Escalade, the city blurred behind the window. William stared at the necklace in his palm. The leaves were imperfect, a little crooked, the clasp a touch loose. Still, it was beautiful, and it was made by a child with his hands. He opened his phone. Get me a background check, he told his assistant. Her name is Mary. She has a niece named Ava. I need to know where they live. There was silence on the other end. Sir, may I ask why? William stared out at the market, where the drizzle fell like memory. I think I just met someone I should have known 10 years ago. The necklace still sat in William's coat pocket the next morning, its silver leaves slightly tangled in the velvet pouch. He turned it over in his palm again, remembering the way Ava had looked at him, cautious, unimpressed, too grown for her age. Back in his office, high above downtown Seattle, the view was all glass and distance. But William couldn't focus on the usual emails or financial reports, not when there was something unfinished whispering beneath the surface. He stood, pulled out his phone, and made a single call. Quentin, he said, I need you to run a discreet report for me. Her name's Mary, maybe mid-40s. She's the guardian of a 10-year-old girl named Ava, Booth at Pike Place. I want to know who they are, where they live, and what happened to Ava's mother. There was a pause on the line. You think this kid's connected to you? William stared out the window. I don't know, but I can't shake the feeling. By nightfall, Quentin had sent over a thin folder. William opened it in the quiet of his study, pouring a glass of bourbon he didn't touch. Ava Wilson, age 10, lives with maternal aunt Mary Ellis in a small apartment in Rainier Valley. Mother, Julia Ellis, currently incarcerated at Monroe Correctional Complex. Charges, second-degree theft. Sentence, 18 months. Eligible for early release in 6. William sat very still, Julia. He hadn't heard that name in 15 years. Julia, with the quiet eyes and contagious laugh. Julia, who used to hum while she read, who smelled like rain and lemongrass tea, who once told him he didn't know how to slow down. And she was right. She'd been a graduate student when they met at an event at the Seattle Art Museum. He'd been rising through the ranks of real estate, barely 30, running on ambition and insomnia. He'd fallen fast. She had, too, he thought, until one day she simply disappeared. No note, no goodbye, just gone. He had tried to find her for months, until his mother, Diane, made it clear she'd been a temporary distraction, said Julia had transferred out of state, that she was doing what's best for everyone, and William, young, overworked, exhausted, let it go. But he never really let it go. Now, her daughter was threading wire in a street market with his hands. He called Quentin again. "Get me the number for Mary Ellis. I need to talk to her." The next day, a meeting was arranged. Mary agreed to meet at a quiet cafe in Beacon Hill. She chose the back table, her posture straight, coat zipped up despite the warmth inside. "You're the man from the market," she said as he approached. "Ava mentioned you." William sat down, gently placing the necklace on the table between them. "I wanted to talk about Julia." Mary's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because," he said, voice steady, "I think I might be her daughter's father." The words changed something in the air. Mary looked down at the necklace, then at him. "Took you long enough?" William swallowed. "I didn't know. Julia never told me. I thought she left on her own," Mary scoffed, bitterly. "She didn't. Your mother made sure of that." He blinked. "My mother?" Mary leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Julia loved you, but she got a visit. A woman in a pearl brooch, offering her money to disappear. Told her you had a future and she'd only hold you back." William felt something icy crawl down his spine. "I never knew." "She tried to write you," Mary continued, "several times, but every letter came back unopened. Your mother had them returned, marked moved." William closed his eyes. He could see Diane doing exactly that. Elegant, calculated, ruthless when it came to protecting the family name. "Julia didn't want Ava growing up resenting you," Mary added, "so she never said your name, just that her father wasn't around." "And now?" William asked quietly. "Now Julia's in prison and Ava's asking questions. She wants to know where she comes from." He nodded, breath shallow. "I need to see her again. Ava, not as a stranger, just someone who cares." Mary studied him. "You care now. But where were you 10 years ago?" William didn't flinch. "I can't undo the past, but I can be here now, if you'll let me." Mary didn't respond right away. She reached into her bag and pulled out something folded. A letter, worn at the corners. She slid it across the table. It was addressed to William, in Julia's handwriting. "I found it in one of her books," Mary said softly. "She never mailed it, maybe because she figured it was pointless." William opened it with trembling hands. The ink was smudged, but the message was clear. "I don't know if you'll ever read this," Julia had written, "but if you do, just know, I named her Ava because it means life, and she was mine the moment I knew I had to let you go." William couldn't speak. He pressed the letter to his chest, eyes burning. "She's your daughter, isn't she?" Mary said gently. William nodded, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel powerful. He felt small, broken, and suddenly filled with a purpose that had nothing to do with boardrooms or buyouts. "Then you'd better figure out how to prove it to her," Mary said quietly. "Because that girl, she doesn't trust easy." The letter still shook in William's hands as he stepped into the library on the east side of his penthouse. The one Julia had once said felt too cold, too staged, too much like a lobby instead of a home. Her handwriting lingered in his mind, every loop and curve seared into memory. "I named her Ava because it means life." And he had missed all of it. The birth, the first steps, her voice, her questions. His mother had stolen those years with the precision of a scalpel, quiet, clean, irreversible. William opened his safe and pulled out a small mahogany box. Inside were letters from clients, press clippings, and one fading photograph from 15 years ago. Julia, laughing on a ferry ride to Bainbridge. Her hair pulled back in the wind, her eyes alive, her arm hooked in his. He hadn't looked at this photo in over a decade. Now, he couldn't look away. He dialed his mother's number. Diane Foster answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and detached as ever. "William, I'm in the middle of a lunch with Senator Keller. Can this wait?" "No," he said flatly. "It can't." A pause. "What's wrong?" "You told me Julia left. You told me she transferred. You said she didn't want to be found." Another pause. A quieter one. William pressed. "You intercepted her letters." "I protected you," Diane said coolly. "She was beneath you. You were set to acquire the Rainier Tower at 32, and she was a graduate student with no connections, no family wealth. What would you have done with a baby and a woman clinging to student loans?" William closed his eyes, jaw tight. "You didn't just protect me, Mother. You erased part of my life." Diane exhaled, slow and patronizing. "And look where you are now. Top of your game, no scandal, no weakness." "I have a daughter," William said quietly, "and I'm going to be in her life." Diane's silence was sharp as glass. Then she said, "You're making a mistake." William didn't answer. He simply ended the call. 3 days later, Mary met him again, this time at her apartment. It was a narrow walk-up tucked between a laundromat and a Mexican bakery, with cracked steps and rusted railings. But it felt lived in, worn but cared for. She led him into a small living room with mismatched furniture, toys tucked into corners, and framed photos lining the mantel. Most were of Ava. Her at 6, holding up a certificate. Her at 8, dressed as a ladybug for Halloween. One showed Julia in a hospital gown, holding a newborn. Her face pale, tired, but proud. "I figured it out last night," Mary said, handing him a folded paper. She kept every letter that came back marked "Return to Sender," postmarked with your mother's private office address. William stared at the envelope. Julia must have felt so abandoned. "She was heartbroken," Mary replied, her voice thick. "But she never said a bad word about you. Not once." They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the refrigerator filling the quiet. "I want to see her," William said. "Julia. I need to. She's at Monroe. Minimum security. Visitors allowed on weekends." Mary studied him. "But don't go there expecting absolution." William looked up. "I'm not. She has every reason to hate you." "I know," he whispered, "but I have to face it." Before he left, Mary handed him something Ava had made, a small bracelet of twisted copper wire and green beads. "She gave this to me last Christmas, said it was meant for someone who showed up." William traced the wire. One end looped in a spiral, then coiled tightly. The same design Ava had used at the market. "She remembers who matters," Mary said quietly. "If you want a place in her life, you'll have to earn it." William nodded, holding the bracelet like it might break. "Then I'll start now." That evening, William stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse. But for once, the view meant nothing. Seattle's skyline blurred as dusk fell. He'd spent his life building towers. Now, he would tear down the walls between him and the only thing that mattered. Julia was still alive. Ava still had time. But the past wouldn't be buried easily, and Diane, his mother, would not back down without a fight. Still, the bracelet wrapped around his palm, tight like a promise. The prison gates clanged behind him as William stepped into the one place he'd never imagined visiting, not for business, but for forgiveness. Monroe Correctional Complex sat an hour outside Seattle, surrounded by tall pines and silence. A place that seemed designed not just to contain, but to erase. Inside, the waiting room buzzed with the soft hum of vending machines and the quiet tension of people holding hope in paper-thin layers. William sat down in the cold plastic chair assigned to him, his palms damp, the bracelet Ava had made resting in his coat pocket like a question he didn't know how to answer. He didn't know what Julia would say. He didn't even know if she'd agree to see him. But when the steel door creaked open and she walked in, wearing a beige uniform and no makeup, William's breath caught. She was thinner, paler. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, a few strands gray now. But her eyes, those steady, unflinching eyes, hadn't changed at all. Julia sat across from him, folding her arms across her chest. "Well," she said calmly, "took you long enough." William swallowed, the words sticking in his throat. "Julia, I didn't know. Don't," she cut in, her voice quiet but sharp. "Don't sit there and act surprised. You left." "I didn't leave," he said desperately. "I thought you were the one who walked away." Julia tilted her head, skeptical. "So, I just disappeared? You really believed that?" "I tried to find you. I asked. My mother said you'd transferred, that you didn't want to be found." Julia gave a bitter laugh. "Of course she did." William leaned forward, elbows on the metal table between them. "She intercepted your letters. I found one of them. She returned them all. You tried. And I didn't know. I swear, Julia." Her expression shifted, the anger softening into something more guarded, but not yet trust. "She came to see me," Julia said after a pause. "Told me you were on the verge of buying your first tower, that a baby would derail everything. She offered money. I told her to leave, but when the letters came back, I figured you made your choice." "No," he said quietly. "The choice wasn't mine, and I'm sorry. For all of it." Silence settled between them again, heavy but not hostile. Finally, Julia spoke again. "Ava doesn't know about you." "I know," William said. "Mary told me. I met Ava at the market. I didn't know who she was, but when I saw her hands, the way she moved, I knew." Julia looked away. "She thinks her dad was just someone I used to know, that he left before she was born. I want to be in her life, Julia. I don't want to replace you. I want to know her." Julia blinked, emotion flickering across her face. "She's smart. Too smart sometimes. And she's stubborn, like you. She remembers everything. She asked me last month if all kids had dads who lived in the air. I think she meant invisible." William's throat tightened. "She deserves the truth." "She deserves stability," Julia said firmly. "She's already had enough upheaval. Her school knows she's the girl with the mom in prison. She's quiet now. Doesn't let many people in." "I'll earn it," William said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever it takes." Julia studied him. "You think showing up changes everything?" "No," he admitted, "but it's where I should have started." She sighed, folding her hands. "Mary says you're serious, that you want to be more than a name." "I do." Julia nodded slowly. "Then start small. Don't overwhelm her. Don't show up with gifts or promises. Just show up." William reached into his coat and placed the bracelet Ava had made on the table. "She made this. For someone who shows up. I didn't even know what it meant at the time." Julia picked it up, her fingers trembling. "She's never given this to anyone outside the family." "I want to be family," he said softly. "If you'll let me." Julia didn't answer right away. Her eyes brimmed, but she blinked the tears back. "You'll have to rebuild her trust. And mine. This isn't a clean slate, William. It's years of hurt." "I know. But," she added gently, "she deserves her father, the one who would have stayed, if he'd known." William nodded, the weight of that truth grounding him. "And, Julia," he said quietly, "I'm not asking you to forgive me, not yet, but I hope one day you might." She gave a small, tired smile. "We'll see." The guard called time. As Julia stood, she paused. "Tell Ava." Tell her name means life. I named her that because she gave me mine. William stood too, his voice steady now. Then I'll make sure she knows the truth. The next time William saw Ava, she stared at him like he didn't belong. And maybe she was right. Not yet. It was Saturday morning, the market already alive with the scent of roasted nuts, fresh bread, and the murmur of local chatter. Ava sat behind her booth, surrounded by trays of beaded necklaces and earrings strung with careful precision. Her hands moved with that same deliberate grace that had stopped William in his tracks the first time, thumb and index finger twisting silver wire, pinky steadying the chain. She didn't look up when he approached. William paused a few feet away, taking in the little fold-up table, the worn chair, the tiny tin cash box she guarded like a vault. Mary stood a few stalls down, pretending to arrange scarves, but clearly watching. He cleared his throat. "You've added a new design." Ava didn't stop working. "You noticed?" He smiled gently. "Of course. That one, the one with the green stones. It's different, a new pattern." She looked up then, eyes guarded. "It's called a wish loop. Every stone's a hope." "That's beautiful," he said sincerely. "Do you ever keep any for yourself?" "No," she said flatly. "These aren't for me." William crouched to her level. "Can I buy one?" Ava paused, then shrugged. "You can, if you want. They're $15. He reached for his wallet, then stopped himself. Instead, he pulled out a small, neatly folded $20 bill he'd tucked away. Not the corporate card, not a shiny bill pulled from a designer clip. Just something simple. She took the money without a smile, dropped it in her tin, then handed him the necklace wrapped in a scrap of brown paper. "Thank you," he said softly. "You don't have to pretend," Ava muttered, finally meeting his eyes. "I know you're rich." William blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're wearing a Mont Blanc watch," she said, nodding toward his wrist, "and your shoes are the kind only people with executive titles buy. I Googled them." He laughed under his breath, caught off guard. "You're very observant." "I'm not dumb," she said. "Most people walk by. They don't look. But you came back. Why?" William leaned in slightly. "Because I think you're amazing." Ava looked away. "You don't even know me." "Not yet," he said gently. "But I'd like to." She stared at him for a long moment. "Are you one of those guys who gives money to look good in the newspaper? CEO supports local kid, turns her into charity case? Is that what this is?" Her words stung. Not because they weren't fair, but because they reflected the world she'd learned to protect herself from. "No," he said after a breath. "This isn't about pity or publicity. I saw something in you that reminded me of someone important." "Who?" she asked, tilting her head. He hesitated, then chose honesty. "Your mom." Ava froze. "You knew my mom?" "I did," he said, voice quiet. "A long time ago." A flicker crossed her face. Surprise, then suspicion. "Are you one of those people from her old life? The ones who said they'd help, then disappeared?" "No," he replied quickly. "I never knew. I didn't know where she'd gone, but I'm trying now. I'm trying to do right by both of you." Ava studied him for a moment, her fingers tightening around the necklace cord in her lap. "Mary says you're nice," she said slowly. "But I don't know if I believe that yet." "That's fair," William said softly. "You don't have to believe it right away. And I don't need help," she added. "I've been doing fine without fancy people or their money." "I believe you," he said. "I'm not here to fix anything. I'm just here to listen, if you'll let me." A long silence stretched between them, the market sounds fading into a distant blur. Finally, Ava reached into her tin and pulled out a small, unfinished pendant. It was oval, the wire uneven but full of intention. A tiny rose quartz bead dangled in the center. "My mom taught me to make these," she said quietly. "This one's not done yet." William nodded. "I'd love to see it when it is." She looked at him, expression unreadable, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Maybe. He stood, careful not to overstay. "Thank you for letting me stop by. I'll see you around?" "Maybe," she repeated, then, softer, "Depends on if you come back." As he turned to leave, Mary approached, arms folded, eyes scanning his face. "She's cautious," she said. "She's smart," he replied. Mary nodded. "Don't break her heart." "I won't," William said, voice firm. "Not this time." As he walked away, the pendant still warm in his pocket, he wondered, not if Ava could accept him, but if he could prove he was someone worth letting in. The prison gates opened again. This time, William wasn't searching for answers. He was ready to ask for forgiveness. The sky was overcast, heavy with the kind of Seattle gray that made everything feel slower. William parked the car himself. No driver, no suit jacket, just a navy sweater and jeans. A quiet man trying to undo the weight of years that had gone unsaid. In his pocket, folded 3 times over, was the letter Julia had written to him over a decade ago. One he never received because his mother intercepted it. It was creased and soft now from how often he had unfolded it, read every word, and wondered how differently life might have turned out if he had just known. The visiting room was quieter today. A few murmured conversations echoed between partitions. The smell of burnt coffee lingered, stale but familiar. Julius entered, escorted by the same guard as last time, her eyes cautious but not cold. William stood instinctively, heart thudding in his chest. "Julia." She nodded once, slow. "You came back." "I said I would," he replied softly, sitting down across from her. "I meant it." A long pause passed between them, their silence filled with the hum of fluorescent lights and the ache of everything they hadn't said. Julia leaned back, folding her arms. "So, what now?" "You met Ava. She's smart, stubborn, doesn't trust easy." "She shouldn't," he said. "She's protecting herself. I can't blame her." Julia tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "But you want her to trust you." "I do," he admitted, "but I don't expect it for free. I've got to earn that, beat." "She told me you bought a necklace," Julia said, her voice unreadable. "Said you didn't try to give her anything flashy, just listened." "I'm learning," William said, managing a small smile. "Slowly." Julia studied him. "What are you really doing here, William?" He hesitated, then pulled out the letter and placed it gently on the table. "I found this." Julia's breath caught. Her fingers moved slowly, brushing over the creases like she was touching a wound she thought had long scarred. She didn't open it. She didn't have to. "I wrote 5 of those," she whispered. "Only that one ever made it back, and it came back unopened, stamped with your mother's initials." William's face tightened. "I didn't know. I believed her when she said you left. I trusted her, and I never should have." Julia's voice cracked. "You think that helps? That it wasn't you? It was her?" "No," he said. "I know it doesn't fix anything. I know saying 'I didn't know' doesn't take away what it cost you." Her eyes brimmed, but she blinked the tears back. "I was scared, William. When Ava was born, I had nothing. Mary helped, but I was broke, desperate. And then the charges came. Petty theft. A few stupid mistakes because I didn't know how else to keep us afloat. I was just trying to feed her." William's throat tightened. "You shouldn't have had to do that alone." "I did what I had to," she said. "And now I'm paying the price." He reached across the table, slowly, until his hand rested just near hers. "Then let me carry part of it now." Julia looked at him, emotion flickering like a candle. Flickering, but not yet out. "I'm not asking to rewrite the past," he said, voice low. "I'm asking for a future, with Ava, with you, if you'll let me be part of it. I don't need anything from you. I just want to help make things better." She didn't move for a moment, then her voice dropped. "Do you still see her in me?" His heart paused. Every second. Something broke open in her expression, a softness behind the guarded lines. Then start by writing her a letter, Julia said quietly. Not about money, not about how much you want to help. Just tell her something real. Tell her what it felt like, meeting her. Tell her what you wish you'd said the day she was born. William nodded, emotion swelling in his throat. I will. She keeps all her letters, Julia added. She ties them in ribbons, even the ones from school friends. She calls it her memory box. He smiled through the ache. Then I'll write something worth keeping. They sat in silence for a while, no longer strangers, not quite reconciled, but something new, something steady. As the guard called time, Julia stood. If you want her to believe in you, William, you better mean every word. I do, he said. As she walked away, her steps slower this time, William felt the weight of his promise settle not as a burden, but as a beginning. The letter still lay on Julia's table when William stepped out of the prison gates, heart heavier than when he walked in. But it wasn't the past that haunted him now. It was the present, and the call waiting on his phone. He climbed into the back seat of his car, the city skyline blurred by rain against the windows. When he finally answered, the voice on the other end was cold and unmistakable. William, we need to talk. About Ava. His mother didn't waste time with pleasantries. He sat up straighter. What about her? Diane Foster exhaled, the sound sharp through the line. I've spoken with my attorney. Given Julia's criminal record and your recent behavior, it may be best if a guardianship is handled by someone more stable. William's jaw tensed. You mean you. She's a child, William, Diane continued, her tone calculated. You're impulsive. You're neglecting business. You've involved yourself with a woman in prison, and now you're playing house with a daughter you just met. That's not stability. He laughed bitterly. No. Stability was intercepting letters from a pregnant woman and leaving your son to believe he was abandoned. There was a pause. Then, her voice dropped. You're letting sentiment cloud your judgment. I won't let you drag that little girl into your chaos. I'll file for emergency custody if I have to. The call ended before he could respond. That night, William stood alone in his penthouse, overlooking the glimmering waters of Puget Sound. The lights of Seattle blinked in the distance, but the only thing he saw clearly was Ava's face, the way her fingers worked instinctively with wire and beads, the quiet pride when someone complimented her necklace, the guarded look she gave him like he was a stranger trying too hard. Ava didn't need more lawyers, more lies, more foster family schemes. She needed truth. She needed protection. He poured himself a glass of water, then set it down untouched. On the kitchen counter, next to a bowl of fruit he hadn't touched in days, lay a small charm he'd bought earlier that week. A tiny silver star, meant to be part of the necklace he planned to give Ava one day, once he earned the right to. Now, he wasn't sure he'd get the chance. The next morning, he met with Sophia, his legal counsel, in a quiet, sunlit office above the firm's downtown Seattle branch. She listened carefully, flipping through paperwork as he laid out the situation. Diane's threat, Julia's incarceration, Ava's current living arrangement with Mary, and his own role in all of it. So, she said, adjusting her glasses, you're not listed on the birth certificate? No, he admitted. Julia tried. My mother blocked everything. Do you have evidence? William pulled out a folder. Inside, the returned letter from Julia stamped with Diane's initials. The handwriting was unmistakable. Sophia's brow arched. That will help. She paused, then added gently, if this goes to court, they'll ask about your lifestyle, your readiness, your motivations. They'll paint you as a wealthy man playing savior to fix past mistakes. Are you ready for that? He met her gaze. I'm not trying to save anyone. I'm trying to show up. Sophia nodded. Then we start with filing for recognition of paternity and requesting joint guardianship, contingent on Julia's release. In the meantime, we prepare for a custody challenge." William leaned back, his heart thudding. It was going to be a war. And the battlefield would be Ava's future. That night, he returned to the market where he'd first seen her, just to watch from a distance. Ava was under the blue tarp again, her table cluttered with handmade earrings and braided leather bracelets. She was laughing with another girl, trading stories as they worked, a kind of peace on her face that made his chest ache. But he didn't go to her, not tonight. Instead, he took out a notebook and began to write, slowly, carefully, the letter Julia had asked him to send. Words from a father who'd missed everything, trying to stitch together meaning from broken years. Dear Ava, I didn't know you existed until a week ago, but now that I do, I see you everywhere, in the way you work with your hands, in the way you watch the world, sharp and quiet and curious. I don't expect you to trust me, but I want you to know I'm not going anywhere, no matter how long it takes. I'm your dad, and I'm here. As he sealed the envelope, he glanced back one last time. Ava was looking toward him. She didn't wave, but she didn't look away either. It was enough. For now. The courtroom was hushed, the air thick with anticipation. William sat at the plaintiff's table, his hands clasped tightly together, knuckles white. Across from him, Diane's gaze was cold, unyielding. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, adjusted her glasses and looked over the documents before her. "Mr. Foster," she began, "you've petitioned for full custody of Ava. Given the circumstances, this is highly irregular. Why now?" William stood, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "Your Honor, I only recently discovered that Ava is my daughter. Her mother, Julia, and I were separated under false pretenses. I want to be a part of Ava's life, to provide her with the stability and love she deserves." Diane's attorney rose. "Your Honor, Mr. Foster has a history of instability. He sold off assets, made erratic decisions. Is this the environment suitable for a child?" William's attorney countered, presenting evidence of William's recent actions, the sale of a major property to fund legal fees, his consistent efforts to connect with Ava, and his plans to establish a community jewelry workshop to support underprivileged youth. The judge nodded slowly. "I will take all this under advisement. Court is adjourned for today." Outside the courtroom, William approached Ava, who stood holding the necklace she had made, the word family gleaming softly. "Ava," he said gently, "I know this is a lot, but I want you to know that I'm here for you." She looked up at him, eyes searching. "Are you going to take me away from Aunt Mary? Fus.organas onegallantcapital.com plus." William knelt to her level. "I want what's best for you. I think we can all be a tati, family, together." Ava hesitated, then nodded slowly. "'Kay." As they walked away, Diane watched from a distance, her expression unreadable. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, William felt hope. The next morning, William received a call from his attorney. "The judge wants to see you, alone." In the judge's chambers, she looked at him intently. "Mr. Foster, I believe in second chances, but I also believe in stability for children. I'm granting you joint custody, with the condition that you establish a stable home environment within 6 months." William's heart soared. "Thank you, Your Honor. I won't let you down." As he left the courthouse, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow. He looked at the necklace Ava had given him, the word family shining brightly. The journey ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, William felt he was on the right path. The courtroom still echoed in William's memory, its stillness, its judgment, the quiet weight of possibility. He hadn't slept much the night after the custody hearing. Instead, he sat at his kitchen table with the necklace Ava had made, thin strands of beaded cord, soft blue and gold, with a single charm at the center. The word family, hand-etched into a small oval pendant, caught the morning light just enough to make him feel unworthy of it. But when he picked her up that afternoon, Ava ran to him. No hesitation, no guarded stare, just a bright, nervous smile as she held out a small velvet pouch and whispered, "I made something for you." He opened it carefully, hands trembling. "I didn't have real silver," she said quickly, "but I used the nicest beads I had." The necklace felt weightier than its size allowed. William looked at her, voice thick. "Did you pick that word yourself?" Ava nodded, chewing her lip. "Because I think maybe you're part of it now. I'm still figuring it out." He didn't speak. He couldn't. Instead, he knelt and wrapped his arms around her small frame. For the first time, she didn't flinch. They spent the afternoon together, just the two of them. He took her to a quiet park in Capitol Hill, where the trees formed a soft canopy overhead. They sat on a bench with ice cream cones and talked, not about court, not about lawyers, but about her art. Ava showed him a sketchbook from her backpack, filled with designs, necklaces, rings, earrings made from twine and copper and glass beads. Some were wild, colorful explosions. Others were simple and deliberate. "This one," she said, pointing to a design of a locket with tiny hands etched inside, "was inspired by something Mom used to wear. I was too little to remember it perfectly, but I tried." William stared at the page, moved beyond words. "Would you like to make it for real one day?" "You mean in, like, a real workshop?" she asked, skeptical. "I mean," he said, smiling gently, "maybe you and I could build one." Ava tilted her head, a habit he recognized now, because he did it too. "Maybe," she said, "if you're not too busy being important." He laughed, not at her, but at himself. "You're more important." It wasn't said for effect. He meant it. Later that evening, back at Mary's house, Ava slipped the necklace around his neck. "It's not perfect," she whispered, "but it's yours." He touched the beads. "It's the best thing I own." Mary stood nearby, arms crossed loosely, watching the exchange. "She's never made one like that for anyone before," she said softly, once Ava had gone inside. "I don't take that lightly," William replied. "I know I've missed 10 years. I can't get that back, but I can be here now." Mary studied him for a long moment. "If Julia could see this, I think she'd be surprised, maybe hopeful." William swallowed the lump rising in his throat. "I'm going to see her again tomorrow." Mary's expression didn't change. "Then you'd better go with your heart wide open." The next morning, before heading to the prison, William paused at a flower shop tucked beside the corner bakery he and Julia used to love. The same bell still jingled over the door. He picked up a small bouquet of white lilacs, Julia's favorite back when they were young and hope was easy. At the visitors' center, Julia sat across from him in a faded denim shirt and standard-issue khakis, her eyes wary but tired. "You came back," she said, surprised. "I meant it when I said I wasn't walking away again." She eyed the flowers. "You remembered?" "I remember a lot more than I let myself admit." There was silence between them, but it wasn't angry. It was full of unspoken years. "I saw Ava," he said. "She gave me this." He held out the necklace. Julia's eyes softened. "She's always made things with her hands, said it helped her think. She told me about the locket design. I want to help her make it real." Julia looked away, blinking fast. "I never thought I'd hear you talk like that. I never thought I'd be a father. But I'm learning." Julia reached across the table and laid a hand over his. Her fingers were calloused, her nails short. "Don't promise what you can't keep, William." "I'm not promising perfection," he said gently. "Just presence." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then she gave a small nod. That might be enough. As he left the prison, The lilac still tucked under his arm, William felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a beginning. And in his pocket, he felt the pendant press gently against his chest, a word that had always seemed distant now beating like a second heart. Julia was released on a Tuesday afternoon, when the skies above Seattle cleared just long enough for the sun to spill golden light across the city. William waited outside the gate in a navy jacket, flowers in one hand, keys in the other. He stood straighter when he saw her, but his eyes softened as she stepped through the chain-link entrance, carrying a brown paper bag and wearing a thin sweatshirt that didn't shield her from the cold. No guards, no shackles, just silence, and then a cautious smile. "Hey," she said, brushing hair from her face. "Hey," he replied. "I didn't bring a parade, just these." He handed her the flowers, white lilacs, fresh and wrapped with twine. Her fingers trembled slightly as she accepted them. "You remembered." "I never really forgot." Julia looked down, then back up. "So, what now?" William gestured toward the black sedan idling at the curb. "We get you home. Ava's been counting the days." The drive back to Mary's house was quiet but warm, the kind of silence filled with unspoken gratitude. William stole glances at Julia as she stared out the window, her face weathered but calm. There was strength in her stillness. When they arrived, Ava burst through the front door before the car even stopped. "Mom!" Julia barely got the door open before her daughter flew into her arms. They both fell into the driveway gravel, laughing and crying as if time hadn't passed, only paused, just long enough for this reunion to matter more. William stood a few feet back, his eyes burning. Mary watched from the porch, arms crossed and smiling. "You did good," she said softly. He nodded once. "We're not done yet." Later that night, after dinner and hours of stories, William and Julia sat on the back steps of Mary's modest home, a string of fairy lights flickering above them. "She asked if she can stay with both of us," Julia said, watching Ava play in the yard with an old jump rope. "And?" William asked, careful. "I told her. Maybe, if we can agree on what that looks like." He nodded slowly. "I'm not trying to take her from you. I want to raise her with you, as equals." Julia chuckled dryly. "You don't remember, but the last time you said something like that, we were 19 and you were planning a house made of driftwood and promises." He laughed softly. "And a rooftop garden with fairy lights. And a recording studio in the basement," she added, smirking. They fell quiet again. The years between them still lingered like ghosts, but the space between their shoulders had closed. William reached into his coat and pulled out the necklace Ava had given him. He held it out. "She made this, for me, after the hearing." Julia took it gently, thumb running over the word etched into the charm, family. "She's always known how to speak without words," she whispered. "She made something for me too, in prison, a small bracelet, just wire and paper beads. The guards let her send it. I wore it every day." They sat there, letting the moment settle. The yard lights buzzed softly. Ava's laughter rang out again. "She forgives easier than I do," Julia said finally. "But I'm working on it." William looked down at his hands. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, just your trust." "That's harder," she admitted, "but maybe not impossible." He looked at her then, eyes honest. "So, co-parenting?" Julia smirked. "Trial basis, with shared custody, and no early morning text blasts." "Deal," he said, extending a pinky. She laughed, hooked hers through his. "We're really doing this, aren't we?" Ava skipped toward them just then, cheeks flushed. "Mom, Dad, guess what?" she said breathlessly. They both froze. She'd never called him that before. Ava didn't seem to notice. "I've been thinking, what if we make a jewelry stand together, like a real one? Maybe sell at the farmer's market next month?" William swallowed. "That's a great idea, sweetheart." Julia knelt beside her. "We'll need supplies. And a name." Ava thought hard, then grinned. "How about Trio Sparkle?" William chuckled. "I love it." The three of them sat in the grass, planning, sketching, laughing like it wasn't their first night together under the same stars. But for all the joy, William knew something else was coming. Diane hadn't made another move, not yet, but silence from her was never peace. It was strategy. Still, in this moment, under this sky, with Ava's arms around them both and the necklace warm against his chest, William allowed himself to breathe. The morning sun spilled across the Foster Enterprises boardroom table, but the warmth didn't reach Diane's face. She sat at the head, impeccably dressed in navy and pearl, fingers laced beneath her chin. Around her, the executives murmured softly, eyes flicking between one another, tension thick as fog. Something had shifted. Diane noticed it immediately. "Let's begin," she said coolly, opening the leather binder before her. But before she could speak another word, the door opened. In walked Charles Levitt, one of the longest-serving board members and a quiet ally of William's. He set a thick folder on the table and slid it forward without speaking. Diane's eyes narrowed. "What's this?" Charles met her gaze evenly. "Documentation. From internal counsel. Regarding intercepted personal correspondence, unauthorized use of the company funds for private legal battles, and manipulation of executive scheduling." A beat of silence followed. Diane's voice sharpened. "I assume this is a joke?" "It's not," Charles replied calmly. "These were sent anonymously, but we verified the letterheads. You returned Julia's letters without informing your son. You attempted to sabotage his custody case. And you misused discretionary budgets to pay off the lawyer who filed the false claim." The boardroom fell into a stunned hush. Another executive, a woman named Tanya, folded her arms. "Is it true, Diane, that you bribed the family court official?" Diane stood abruptly. "I did what was necessary to protect this family's legacy. William was being reckless, emotional. He let sentiment blind him." "No," Charles said, voice quiet but firm. "He finally saw clearly. You just didn't like what he saw." Diane's lips parted, the fight still in her, but the silence around her was louder than her defense. The loyalty she'd once commanded had eroded. Tanya leaned in. "We're calling for an emergency vote of confidence." Diane's jaw tightened. "You don't have the numbers." "We do," Charles replied, "and the documents to support it." One by one, hands rose around the table. She didn't stay to see the final count. By evening, Diane sat alone in her penthouse, the skyline stretching beyond her floor-to-ceiling windows like a world that had moved on without her. The television played quietly in the background, local news full of morning market updates and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. She stared blankly at a photograph on the fireplace mantel. Herself, William at 16, standing beside his father at a corporate gala, a frozen moment of polished perfection. There was a knock at the door. Mary stood on the threshold, holding a small box. Diane didn't move. "What do you want?" "I'm not here to fight," Mary said. "Ava asked me to drop this off." She handed Diane the box and turned to leave. Diane hesitated before opening it. Inside, on a bed of soft felt, was a bracelet. One Ava had made, smaller than the others, simple red and gold beads strung around a cardboard tag. One word was written in Ava's handwriting. "Forgive." Diane's hand trembled. She sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the child's creation for what felt like hours. Across town, William and Julia stood side by side in front of a vacant shop with peeling paint and dusty windows. Ava ran ahead, peering into the glass with wonder. "This is it?" she asked, eyes wide. William smiled. It's not much now, but it could be. I can already see it, Julia added. Workbench here, glass display there, lights strung across the front window. Will people come? Ava asked, suddenly shy. They will, William said, because what we'll build here won't just be about jewelry. It'll be about stories. Like mine? Ava whispered. He knelt beside her. Especially yours. Julia reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I've been working on a name. Ava took it and opened it carefully. Her eyes lit up. Trio Sparkle, handmade with heart. I love it. William's phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked it. An unknown number with a short message. I stepped down. I'll stay away, but tell her. The bracelet is beautiful. He looked up, breath catching, and then showed the message to Julia. She still has a long way to go, Julia said softly. So do we, he replied. Ava reached for both their hands and squeezed. Let's start here. They turned to the old storefront again. For now, it was just brick and glass. But to the three of them, it already shimmered. The sign over the door read Trio Sparkle, painted in Ava's careful handwriting, accented with 3 tiny stars above the name. The storefront on Cherry Street still smelled faintly of paint and sawdust, but inside the light was warm, golden, and full of something more than electricity. Legacy. Opening day had arrived. William stood near the back wall, adjusting a wooden shelf lined with handmade bracelets. He wore the necklace Ava had given him. Family, resting just over his heart. Every time he looked at it, he remembered how far they'd come. Julia was behind the counter, her hands surprisingly steady, arranging a tray of gemstone earrings. Her eyes flicked up every few seconds, watching Ava. And Ava. She stood by the front door, in a pressed white dress with bead accents she'd sewn herself, fingers fidgeting at the edge of her pocket. "Mom," she whispered, "what if no one comes?" Julia smiled softly and walked over, placing a hand on her daughter's back. "People don't come just for jewelry, Ava. They come for connection, and no one creates that better than you." William joined them at the door. "Besides," he said gently, "we already have the most important people here." At that moment, the bell above the door chimed, then again and again. First came Mary, arms full of fresh flowers, then Sophia, William's attorney, holding a box of pastries. A young couple from the farmer's market followed, then a teacher from Ava's school, and a few older women from the community center who remembered Julia before everything fell apart. Each person brought something: curiosity, kindness, memories, and left with something more. By noon, the store buzzed with laughter and gentle conversation. People admired the custom designs, especially Ava's locket line, which she'd named Unbroken Things. A local reporter arrived with a notepad and warm smile. "This place, it feels like a story waiting to be told." "It already is," William replied. "It just took us a while to write it." Later that afternoon, when the foot traffic slowed, Julia disappeared briefly into the back room and returned with a surprise: a large canvas wrapped in brown paper. Ava tilted her head. "What's that?" "It's something we made together," Julia said, nodding at William. She unwrapped it slowly. The canvas revealed a painted family tree, but not in the traditional sense. Instead of branches, it was crafted from wire and beads, each section of the tree made from jewelry elements. The roots were copper spirals, the trunk wound with braided leather, and the leaves were glass gems. At the top, hanging from a golden hook, was the word "Begin." Ava blinked hard. It's us." William crouched beside her. "We thought we'd hang it right here, near the front, so people remember what this place is about." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I'm glad you found me." He swallowed the lump rising in his throat. Me too, sweetheart. They stood there together, all three of them, arms linked, watching the light shift across the floor, the beads, the dreams. Outside, across the street, Diane stood behind the tinted window of a town car, her hands in her lap. She didn't get out. She didn't wave. But she watched. When the family tree was hung in the window and Ava stepped back to admire it, Diane finally reached for the bracelet beside her, the one Ava had sent. She slipped it onto her wrist. She didn't cry, but for the first time in decades, she didn't feel like she needed to control the ending. That evening, when the last customer left and the open sign was flipped to closed, William locked the door and turned to the two people who'd changed his life. "I was thinking," he said, "we could add a little workshop in the back, teach kids how to make things, maybe even sponsor local artists." Ava's eyes lit up. "Can we call it Sparkstar Studio?" Julia laughed. "I love it." They turned off the lights together. Not everything was fixed. Not every scar was gone. But the shop glowed from within, even as the night fell around it. And as William closed the door behind them, hand in Julia's, Ava skipping ahead, one truth settled quietly in his heart. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of everything that mattered.